You already know bad boys win, you've watched it happen. Maybe you've lived it from the wrong side. The bad boy doesn't have more money, isn't more educated, isn't objectively better looking, and yet she's in his passenger seat at 11 p.m. while you're still on red. Everyone says the same thing. He wins because he doesn't care, because he's unavailable, because he's confident. That's not it. The bad boy wins because he doesn't seduce the woman in front of him. He seduces the woman she's been hiding from herself. And the moment you understand that sentence, really understand it, the entire architecture of attraction becomes visible. There's one step in this process, step 2, that once you see it, you will see it operating in every attraction dynamic you've ever witnessed or been part of. And it will explain everything you couldn't figure out before. Step 1, frame seizure. When a bad boy walks into a room, what game is he playing? Not the one you're playing. Most men enter a social interaction running a very specific, very exhausting internal program. It sounds like this: does she like me? Am I saying the right thing? Was that too much? Did that land? This is the program of a man who has appointed the woman as his judge. Every move he makes is evidence submitted in a trial, where she decides the verdict. He is not being himself, he is performing the most convincing version of himself he can manufacture on short notice. And she feels it, not through mystical feminine intuition, through pattern recognition, millions of years of evolutionary calibration. The female nervous system is built to detect incongruence. The way a hawk detects a limp in a field mouse, she doesn't know what she's detecting, but something in her body registers it before her conscious mind articulates it. The signal is this: man does not know his worth, and low certainty of worth is the single most consistent attraction killer in existence. Not bad looks, not low income, uncertainty about your own value. The bad boy runs a completely different program. He enters the interaction carrying one assumption so total it rewires the entire dynamic. I am not here to be evaluated, I am here to evaluate. Lord Byron understood this in a way that still seems almost impossible given the facts of his situation. He was physically flawed, born with a club foot he was deeply self-conscious about as a young man. He wrote about darkness, grief, and internal decay. He was publicly scandalous, accused of incest, chronically in debt, eventually expelled from respectable English society entirely. And half of European aristocracy lost their minds over him. Lady Caroline Lamb, married to a future Prime Minister, surrounded by the most eligible men in England, described Byron as mad, bad, and dangerous to know. She wrote it in her journal as a warning to herself. Then she dressed as a page boy to sneak past his servants, sent him locks of her own hair, staged increasingly theatrical performances of devotion until the obsession consumed her entirely. Byron never chased her back, not once. What made him magnetic wasn't solely his poetry, though it was extraordinary. It was his complete unperformative inhabitation of his own frame. He had already decided who he was, not in an announcing, arrogant way, in the settled, immovable way of a man who no longer requires external confirmation of his existence. When you are settled, women don't simply pursue you. They push against you first, testing, probing, challenging, searching for the place where you'll buckle. When you don't buckle, something shifts. They stop testing. They start leaning. This is frame seizure, not a technique, not a posture you rehearse. A state of being so fully your own person that her frame never gets the opportunity to become the dominant reality of the interaction. Here's the distinction most men miss. Arrogance and authority feel completely different to a woman. Arrogance announces itself, it needs to be heard. It says, I'm better than everyone in this room. That is insecurity performing confidence. She detects the performance within seconds. Authority is still. It doesn't announce, it simply occupies space. When you are still, the room adjusts to you. When you are chasing approval, the room notices and quietly disqualifies you. Step 2, the identity. Seduction. Here is the truth about every woman you have ever met. She contains two versions of herself. The first is the woman she presents to the world, polished, curated, appropriate. The woman who says the right things, wears the right things, responds in the ways her social environment rewards. She has been building and maintaining this version since adolescence. It is her most practiced performance, and most days she barely notices she's performing. The second woman has never been properly introduced to anyone. She is darker, more restless, more alive. She wants things she would never say out loud in mixed company. She carries desires she has confessed to no one. She is secretly exhausted by how many years she has been operating inside the first version, how much energy it costs, how rarely she feels genuinely real inside it. This second woman is not her true self in some naive self-help sense. She is more complex than that. She is the self that contains the appetites the first version was specifically designed to suppress, the version that finds the endlessly pleasant, endlessly agreeable man a little boring without being able to explain why, the version that is viscerally interested in the man who looks like he survived something. Every man she's dated has courted the first woman. They complimented the performance. They were charmed by the curation. They said all the right things to the polished surface version, and then wondered why the relationship felt like it was missing something. The bad boy doesn't see the first woman. This is the dirty trick. He doesn't seduce who she is. He seduces who she could be. He looks past the performance and speaks directly to the second woman, not through explicit declarations, through the texture of his attention, through what he notices, through his complete indifference to the parts of her that took the most effort to assemble. He makes her feel, often without a single direct word about it, that he knows she's performing and that he finds the performance the least interesting thing in the room. That recognition that is erotic in a way that no compliment ever is. He doesn't court the woman in front of him, he courts the woman she secretly wishes she was. Giacomo Casanova is the most misread figure in the history of seduction. People remember the numbers. They don't read what he actually wrote about the mechanics. In his memoirs, a document of extraordinary psychological precision, not the scandal sheet people expect. Casanova makes a confession most men would dismiss as tactical nonsense. He writes that he never set out to conquer women, he set out to liberate them. His method was to create an environment through the particular quality of his presence and attention, where a woman felt safe releasing the parts of herself she had been required to suppress. The hunger, the irreverence, the darkness, the version of herself that ordinary society had taught her to lock in a room and never mention. He was not pursuing, he was making space. When she released those parts, when she said something she'd never said, admitted something she'd always hidden, stepped into a version of herself she hadn't shown anyone, she bonded to him, not because he had captured her, because he was the first person who made her feel that the hidden version of herself was not only acceptable, but specifically deliberately compelling to someone. The bond this creates is neurologically distinct from ordinary attraction. Ordinary attraction is the pull towards something you want. This bond is the fierce, irrational attachment to the person who allowed you to become someone you want to be. You can replace the source of ordinary attraction. Someone else can be equally charming, equally witty, equally good-looking. You cannot replace the person who first showed you a version of yourself you didn't know existed. This is why women who fall for bad boys describe the attachment in language that baffles their friends. "He's not even that great" is always true about the surface version. It is never true about what he represents. He represents the first time she felt real. And real is the most addictive thing a human being can experience. He doesn't ask, "What do you do?" He says, "I get the feeling you're performing something right now, and I'm genuinely curious what's underneath it." He doesn't compliment her appearance. He names something she's never shown anyone. "There's something restless about you, like you've been living slightly below your actual temperature for a while." He doesn't agree with everything she says. He holds a different perspective and refuses to abandon it under the social pressure of her disapproval. He disagrees without apology and without aggression. The way a man disagrees who has no requirement for her validation. Each of these is a signal transmitted directly to the second woman. "Come out. I won't punish you for existing. I've been waiting for the real version." And when she does emerge, when she says something genuine for the first time in weeks, when she confesses something she usually filters, when she laughs at something she'd normally suppress, he receives it without surprise, without excessive enthusiasm, with the calm recognition of a man who always knew she was capable of this. That reception, that specific calm, unhurried reception, that is the moment the bond forms. Step 3. The permission paradox. Most men spend their lives seeking women's permission, explicit or implicit. They want the signal of approval before they act. They present themselves as candidates and wait for selection. They think this is respect. They've been told it's respect. It's not. It's the single biggest attraction killer in their arsenal. Not because women don't want to be desired, but because constant permission seeking signals something devastating. This man has no standards of his own. A man without standards is a man who accepts whatever is offered, and a man who accepts whatever is offered has no value in the economy of attraction. Scarcity creates value universally in every market, including this one. The bad boy does something that feels almost irrational when you first observe it. He makes her seek his permission, not through games or deliberate withholding, through genuine, unapologetic standards that apply to everyone equally, including her. From the first interaction, his presence communicates something not in words but in the whole architecture of his attention. I don't reward mediocrity of engagement. I don't respond to performances. If you want to exist in my world, you have to actually show up. Most women have never experienced this from a man. The vast majority of men accept whatever she gives, receive the polished surface with gratitude, and say thank you for the scraps. So when a man holds a standard, when he doesn't laugh at the joke that wasn't funny, when he doesn't validate the opinion he disagrees with, when he doesn't chase after she pulls back, something uncomfortable and galvanizing happens inside her. She wonders if she's measuring up. She begins, possibly for the first time in years, to want to impress someone. He didn't need her approval, and she spent the rest of the evening trying to earn it. Richard Francis Burton, Victorian explorer, polymath, spy, and by most accounts one of the most psychologically magnetic men of the 19th century, mastered 29 languages, disguised himself to infiltrate Mecca at a time when discovery meant immediate death, and was described by contemporaries as the most dangerous man in the British Empire. Women who met Burton reported a uniform experience. They felt assessed, not courted, like they were the ones auditioning, like he was deciding whether they were interesting enough to merit his time. Burton wasn't performing this dynamic. He had so much happening: expeditions in active planning, manuscripts in progress, intelligence operations active, that any individual woman's approval registered as approximately 0 on his internal scale. Not because he was indifferent to women, because he was so fully alive in his own world that he simply had no vacancy for approval seeking, and she could feel it. This is the permission paradox. By withdrawing his need for her permission, he became the person whose permission she needed. Philip Zimbardo's research on social influence documented the mechanism precisely. When people encounter someone who genuinely doesn't require their approval, they instinctively orient toward that person as an authority. They seek the approval they were told wasn't being requested. The withdrawal of need creates the hunger for acknowledgement. Stop presenting yourself as a candidate. Become the person doing the selection, not as a performance, as a reality built by a man who has actual standards in the spine to hold them. Step 4, the controlled fracture. Here's the assumption everyone makes about bad boys. They win because they never show weakness. Wrong. Entirely. They win in part because of precisely how they show weakness. One specific kind, delivered once, sealed immediately after. Authentic attraction cannot exist toward a person who cannot be wounded. Read that again. A man who displays no vulnerabilities is not communicating strength. He is communicating closeness, and closeness triggers weariness, not desire. She can feel a permanently locked door from across the room. It doesn't excite her. It signals nothing real lives in here. The average man makes 2 catastrophic errors at opposite extremes. The first, he shows no vulnerability whatsoever. He performs in vulnerability so consistently that the performance becomes transparent. She can feel the effort it takes, and effort signals insecurity. The armor is visibly too tight. The second, having read somewhere that vulnerability is attractive, he floods the interaction with emotional disclosure, catalogs of past trauma, childhood wounds, previous relationship failures, an unedited download of everything he's been told to open up about. This does not create attraction, it creates a therapist. Women feel tenderness for the man who needs this much emotional unpacking. They don't feel desire, they feel the weight of a caretaking role they didn't sign up for. The bad boy does neither. He shows one crack unannounced, without drama, without any bid for sympathy, and then he moves on immediately, as if he mentioned something of no particular consequence. He might say simply, "There was a period where I was capable of being genuinely cold to people. I don't have much fondness for what I was then." Then he changes the subject. That sentence, and his complete refusal to dwell inside it, communicates more about the architecture of his character than 1,000 confident declarations ever could. She has seen inside the fortress once briefly. The door opened a few inches and closed again, and now she cannot stop thinking about what else might be in there. Shakespeare intuited this mechanism 4 centuries before psychology named it. Hamlet is the archetype of the bad boy in Western literature, not because he is physically dangerous, but because he is utterly, completely unreadable. His darkness is visible just enough to be compelling. The full architecture of his interior remains permanently inaccessible. Oilia doesn't love him despite his instability. She loves him because she has glimpsed something real beneath the performance of a man who otherwise cannot be decoded. She has seen the fracture, and she spends the rest of the play trying to get close enough to understand what she saw. This is the model. Not a broken man, not an emotionally closed man, a man who is whole enough that vulnerability is a choice, not a condition, who discloses once with precision and then closes the door. And she spends the rest of the evening, maybe the rest of the week, offering different things, trying different approaches, trying to earn the right to have that door open again. The psychological mechanism is precise. The brain assigns value proportional to rarity. Information disclosed freely, constantly, repeatedly, is worth nothing. Information disclosed once without ceremony, from someone who clearly doesn't traffic in emotional disclosure, becomes the most significant data point she holds about you. She will return to that sentence, turn it over, build theories around it, and in that building and that investment of mental and emotional energy, the attachment deepens in ways that smooth, consistent performance never creates. So the architecture exposed, frame seizure, the identity seduction, the permission paradox, the controlled fracture. 4 steps, 1 coherent operating system, not a collection of tricks, not lines to rehearse in a bathroom mirror. A coherent way of inhabiting yourself so completely that seduction becomes a byproduct of your presence rather than a goal you are consciously, anxiously pursuing. The bad boy is not running a con. He's not smarter than you, not less ethical, not genetically blessed with some quality you were denied. He has simply never been infected with the belief that he needs to earn his right to exist in the room. He doesn't seduce women, he reveals them to themselves, and they spend years trying to find their way back to that feeling. Every technique in this sequence shares one common requirement. You cannot perform it. You cannot fake the frame. You cannot manufacture the identity seduction. You cannot counterfeit the permission paradox. These things only work when they emerge from genuine internal reality, from a man who is actually not performatively full, which means the dirty trick is not a trick at all. It is a confrontation with yourself. The bad boy was not born this way. He was built through rejection or loss, or some point where he stopped asking the world for permission to be who he already was. The question that should sit with you now isn't how do I use these 4 steps? It's this: which version of yourself have you been protecting women from? Because the version of you that can walk into a room and need nothing from it, that version isn't absent. It has never been absent. It has been buried under years of performing the agreeable, the available, the safe. The woman who made her choice before you finished your sentence wasn't choosing him over you. She was choosing the man he allowed himself to be. And the only question left is whether you're ready to allow the same. Most of you will let this land, close the app, and go right back to performing, back to seeking permission, back to courting the polished surface, while wondering why she never feels the depth of connection you know you're capable of. If you're done with that cycle, if you want the unfiltered mechanics of attraction, desire, and dark psychology that I don't put in public videos, hit the join button below. The darkest material doesn't live here, it lives there.